We'll now start the webinar, Intergenerational Volunteering, the Gift That Keeps on Giving. My name is Alison Stevens and I work for Volunteer Canada. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let me begin by acknowledging with respect that the land on which Volunteer Canada is situated is on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. And the land on which I live, work, and volunteer in Montreal, or Jodoge, is the traditional unceded territory of the Ganukahage. It is with a mixture of anguish and hope that I express my gratitude for all that I receive from this land, and I'm committed to understanding how I can contribute to both truth and reconciliation by addressing our past with an open mind and open heart. Colonialism, oppression, white supremacy, and systemic racism have caused harm to many people in Canada and around the world. May we support and accompany each other in our individual and shared journeys towards a society built on justice, respect, equality, and harmony, so that we may all thrive and prosper as diverse and connected communities and nations. I will be starting off by sharing with you some of what Volunteer Canada has learned about intergenerational programs and volunteering over the past several months, and then I'll pass the microphone to two experts who will talk to you about their programs and share some of their experience and wisdom with us. After the presentations, we'll invite you to share your questions. So first, a few words about Volunteer Canada, for those who may not be familiar with us. I'm just going to get that. Move over my... For the past 43 years, Volunteer Canada has been providing national leadership and expertise on volunteerism for the purpose of enhancing the participation, quality, and diversity of volunteer experiences. Why? Not simply to have more volunteers or even to have more diverse volunteers involved in a wider variety of roles. No, in order to build strong, resilient communities across the country. Of course, we do not work alone, but with and through a network of over 150 volunteer centers, large and small nonprofit organizations, companies, educational institutions, government departments, and of course, volunteers. I was pleased in my research to come across this quote from Margaret Mead, the well-known American cultural anthropologist. Connections between generations are essential for the mental health and stability of a nation. Think about that. Interesting. So where did this all start for Volunteer Canada? As I said, volunteering is our main concern, and the thing about volunteering is that it's all about connection. Volunteering creates links between and amongst people, their communities, and the causes they care about. It also connects them with meaning and change, both in themselves and in the world around them. Nowhere is connection more evident than in intergenerational volunteering. Bringing members of different generations together fosters relationships and understanding between the individuals involved. But here is where the gift keeps on giving, is that intergenerational volunteering also helps to address social problems. Some examples of these are ageism and other prejudices, loneliness and social isolation, which is the one that's most often mentioned, cultural identity gaps, poor educational outcomes, digital divides, cognitive decline in older adults, and the list goes on. In the work that we have done exploring intergenerational volunteering, we discovered inspiring programs all over the country, complex programs involving shared physical space, and also simple programs where different generations join together to share stories and activities they both enjoy. We also learned about what goes into making them meaningful, how they can enrich the communities in which they exist, and what ingredients are essential for them to be successful. So one of the first things we learned is that there are many types of programs. Just to name a few: volunteer grandparents, cultural and intercultural programs, intergenerational and intercultural events. Just going to let somebody in. Shared physical spaces, as I mentioned, usually preschools and residence for elders. What they all have in common is that they're perfectly designed, purposefully and maybe perfectly, purposely designed based on both research and experience. From what I heard in in the discussions that I had, the interviews, the webinars, the programs, is that there's always learning going on. They're like learning organizations. You have to keep listening and as you go along, and they're focused on learning and relationship building. Then they're not only different types of programs, but they vary depending on the activities that are involved. These activities are determined sometimes by the type of organization that's sponsoring the program or running the program, or just the context in which the individuals come. So they're storytelling, as I've mentioned already, scrapbooking, different kinds of plastic arts, book clubs. There's technical training, tutoring, and mentoring. There's research, and it can be outdoors as well. So there's walking and gardening, depending on the time of year and the province, or how far north or south that you are. And there's singing, and I want to mention that as a member of a choir, I was so delighted to discover an intergenerational choir in Victoria. You should check it out if you're interested in music yourself. Obviously, in person is the best, but so many groups have been continuing some, if not all, of their activities in a virtual form during COVID. It's quite impressive. While any intergenerational activity can be pleasurable, we found there's certain elements that make for programs that are successful for their participants and have benefits and repercussions for their communities. First, they have clear goals and objectives for each activity and for the overall program. They are ongoing. There's an ongoing and regular review or evaluation of the program, and I think this is really important in order to be able to continue what is working and is successful, and also to improve or change what is not working. This implies that the participants are involved. It's not just the organizers of the program or the coordinators. It is really got to involve the participants. So likewise, there's preparation and continued support offered to all the parties involved. So whether it's education about the other generation, or about if there's multi-generations, pertinent knowledge and training on skills involved. Also, really making sure that the needs and ideas of all parties are involved and heard and included in the design. So this is what I was saying about it being, constantly in progress. It's like it's not just a fixed thing that we do and this is what we're going to do forever. Programs also sufficiently long, several months really, usually I think, to allow relationship building as well as learning and sharing of stories, skills, or experience. So we're not talking about those preschools that come in and sing a song for seniors. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that is not developing relationships. It's just it's more entertainment. One generation entertaining the other. And then the final thing would be a facilitating group or individual for coordinating the activities and ensuring that there is evaluation that takes place. Now, in terms of volunteer engagement, not all intergenerational programs engage volunteers. The two organizations we're highlighting today, Grandpals and Cyber Seniors, definitely engage volunteers. However, there are wonderful programs whose participants are not volunteers as we would think of them. Participants often choose, but normally it's their parents or caregivers who make the choice. So for example, in the shared spaces programs that I referred to, where it's early childhood care centers and long-term facilities, very often the caregivers choose or the parents choose. And They have planned regular activities and spontaneous interactions that involve the young children and the older adults. Both generations are actively engaged, and the fact that they might not have freely chosen as volunteers in no way takes away from the benefits of these programs, for sure. So, through our work on intergenerational volunteering, we are turning a spotlight on this interesting and valuable way for Canadians to engage in their communities. So as of this week, well really last week, we are providing information, tools, and resources on our website to encourage older adults to volunteer with children and youth, to introduce school-age children and adolescents to volunteering with people in other generations, and to support organizations to design and improve programs that help to fill the gaps in our communities. So under the heading of engaging volunteers, there is now a new section called Intergenerational Volunteering. And one of the pages in this section is a searchable inventory of programs and resources. So in that inventory, you will find different programs and also programs mostly in Canada, but there's some descriptions of ones outside of Canada as well. There are websites, there are tools, there are guides, there are articles, there are video testimonials. So really, basically, all different aspects of information and resources about intergenerational programming. So if you want to get involved, or if you're looking for an activity for an older adult or child in your life, if you're interested just in seeing what's out there, if you want to get ideas for starting or improving an existing program, or you want to recommend a resource, just click on Intergenerational Volunteering in this presentation when you get it, or look on our website. The inventory is by no means exhaustive, of course, and we would like it to grow. We will continue looking for more content and invite others to contribute. So that's about all I have to say for now. I'm now delighted to introduce Jules, Meyer, and Charlene O'Connor. Jules is from Grandpals, and Charlene is from Cyber Seniors. They will be able to describe their programs and share some of their, learning and ideas and about intergenerational volunteering. So over to you, Jules, first.
Thanks, Alison. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see so many people on this call today. It's so nice to meet you all. So as Alison mentioned, my name is Jules Meyer. My pronouns are she, her. And I have been hired by the Center for Studies in Aging and Health, which is a department of Providence Care, which is a publicly funded healthcare provider in Kingston. And together, this organization is hosting a program called Grandpals. And so my role with them as a project manager is to support them in reimagining how Grandpals works going forward, given everything that's been happening throughout this pandemic. As you can imagine, some of the program aspects need to be adapted so that it can be more future-proof. Another really fun aspect that I've been involved with is working with Grandpals and educators and students to rethink how this program is run so that it can expand beyond its original home place, which is in Orangeville. So right now we're at this really exciting point in time where we are working with different communities around Canada from coast to coast to coast, and providing the opportunity to run and implement Grandpals in local communities. So on the next slide, I'll take you through a little bit about what the program is, how it works, and then share a little bit of the benefits to it that we're seeing from it, and also I'll share some ways that you can potentially get involved if you're interested. So for starters, Grandpals is a program that is intergenerational in nature. So we work with classrooms and groups of older adults, ages 55 years and older, and together we match classrooms with a small team, a little cohort of Grandpals. And together, they work together over a series of months. And at the very core of it, it's all about storytelling and learning and that mutual learning between generations, and also building those connections and friendships, and having an opportunity to also, like beyond the storytelling part, it's also having an opportunity for people to exchange their perspectives and viewpoints and broaden world views. That's something that's been really beautiful about this program over the years. So it did start in 2010. It was started by an educator named Mark Meyer. He's actually won the Governor General's Award for teaching excellence and creating this program along with another educator. And so we're really excited to be at this point where we can now offer this more broadly around Canada. And if you go to the next slide there, I'll show you a little bit about how we've adapted this program. So as you can imagine, during the height of the pandemic, so in 2020, and for the beginning of, 2020 and 2021, for the beginning of that pandemic, we weren't in a position to have the Grandpals meet physically with the classrooms. So this past year, we've spent a lot of time working with Grandpals and educators and students to figure out, okay, how can we adapt this program so that people can still, generations can still meet, share their stories, share all the learnings that they've had with one another, and build connections. And so I'm very pleased to share that we've tested out different ways of doing this, but the one in which we're finding a lot of success is this hybrid model. And so our hybrid model for Grandpals is having an option to meet virtually. So the students, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, they meet physically in the classroom, and then the Grandpals are video streamed in through a video conference platform. So whether Google Meets or Zoom, whatever it is. And the Grandpals are able to share their stories and learnings, and same with the students. So they're able to pose questions and share some of their learnings as well and form connections that way. And all while ensuring that the safety and considerations are taken into account, so that we're very mindful of the restrictions that may be placed on schools, and also some of the requirements that the Grandpals have, and making sure that we're creating avenues for them to participate without having to physically be there, and when that's deemed necessary. If you go to the next slide, so I did mention it's a hybrid. We still have that model where the Grandpals can physically meet with the students. And so what we've done is we'll pair the Grandpals each with a group of 3 or 4 students, so they have an opportunity to meet together and share their stories and learn from one another. And each week, it's a weekly program, each week they focus on a different theme. And what we found from that is it gives time for the students and the Grandpals to explore different areas of their lives, share different perspectives, talk about decisions that were made, how those decisions were made, and also explore what that means, like what that's meant to them in their life, how it makes them feel. So there's all these different wonderful social emotional learning that are coming out of it from the student side, but then also this wonderful opportunity for the adults in the community to give back to their community and help to build and strengthen those connections. And if you go to the next slide, this is really neat. So I mentioned a couple of things here. One is that it's a story-based program, that it's all about connecting generations and providing space for folks to talk and connect and build friendships and have meaningful conversations. And the other thing that's really neat about this program is it is project-based. So what that means is that at the beginning of the program, the educator who's hosting the Grandpals in the classroom meet with the team of Grandpals who will be working with the students throughout a series of months, maybe 3 or 4 months. It's really up to the community to decide what's best for them. And at the outset, the educator and the Grandpals come up with a project for the students to collaborate on throughout the duration of the program. And so what you're seeing on the screen here are some of the results from some of the programs in previous years. So there have been art-based ones, there's been projects where students will write poetry or write songs or write a book or done a storybook. And the really neat thing about it is that they're taking the learnings from the conversations and then they're transforming them into something that they can be proud of that represents what some of their learnings from their Grandpals. And that in turn is then given back to, or given to, their respective Grandpals. So a really neat one, I'll just highlight one because there's loads of them, but the image there of Cecil is really neat. It was actually done by a grade 5 student. And it's a tracing of their Grandpal, an image of their Grandpal. And if you zoom in really closely, the lines of Cecil's profile are actually written, a written story of when he was a child and wanted to, and it was in a moment that he had at school and that really left an impression on him. And the student really, that story really resonated with them. So that student transformed that learning from the Grandpal and created this portrait of Cecil. So there's some really creative outlets for students to take that learning, think critically about it, and then apply their learning to something that they can give back to their Grandpal. It's all about that reciprocal learning and reciprocal, the reciprocity of giving. If you go to the next slide, so here's on a macro level how it works. So I mentioned that we're working, so Grandpals, the staff there, we work with adults ages 55 years and older who are interested in becoming Grandpals to classrooms. We also work with community organizers. So organizations, it could be a hospital, it could be a healthcare provider, it could be a community center, it could be any sort of organization who has an interest in strengthening community ties. We also work with educators, and together we coordinate basically matching folks together and supporting with that process of getting those 3 actors together. And then we help them not only by matching, but we also support with the vetting or the screening process to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to ensure that we're running this program in a safe fashion. So that safeguarding element is we support with. And then we also support with that equipping. So creating opportunities to learn and hone in your skills on how to work with one another. So that is an offering that Grandpals has for folks. And then the really neat one, and this is what makes it so responsive to each community, is that co-creation piece. So going forward, we're working together with each community, and we bring them together, and the Grandpals and the educator and the community coordinator sit down and they go through a co-creation session that we've developed that enables each community to tailor it to their own specific requirements. So all the way from the logistical, practical things to like what time do you want to meet, when, the frequency, all the way to, okay, what do we need to make this successful and what type of project will come out of this. And together, so that's where the community then takes ownership of that program and runs it, and they meet for at least 8 weeks, but sometimes it's longer, up to them. And then it culminates in a celebration, at which point community members are welcome to come into the celebration and hear from the students as they present back to their Grandpals, and the Grandpals often provide their reflections on the program as well. So it's a really beautiful way to wrap up the program. And then communities are welcome to repeat as they wish, or if they want to branch out and have match up with different groups in the community, then we can support with that as well. So that's a big picture of how it works. And if you go to the next slide, here are the benefits. So there are, as you can imagine, there are a lot of benefits of having intergenerational programs, and Alison had shared a few earlier, so I won't go into too much detail here, but basically the benefits that we're seeing from running Grandpals in a community is that, one, it's responsive to community's needs and to their requirements. So there's that intentional aspect of building a program that's going to work for the folks directly involved. That second area is around building that connection and stronger communities. So as you can imagine, the very nature of the program and bringing generations together for shared learning and storytelling and building friendships, it has that wonderful effect of creating a stronger community. And then the other outcome that we're seeing is around diminishing ageist attitudes. And so really helping to promote a positive perspective on aging at every stage of life. And that's been a really beautiful outcome that we've seen from this program. In particular, for the students, we're seeing a lot of improved social emotional learning. We're even seeing that with the virtual setting as well, which has been really neat. We're still very early stages as we're just starting out on that virtual side of things, but that's been something that we've heard feedback from a principal who joined at the celebration at the end of the program. And then on the benefits for the adults who are participating in it is that increased positive perception towards aging, improved confidence to connect with different generations, and that notion of having the like guiding and making a difference for the next generation, having that sense of reciprocity and learning and feeling respected by other generations. We're seeing that come through a lot as well. So I'll pause there with benefits and I'll wrap things up. So last slide. Thanks, Alison. So in closing, if this is something that you are interested in learning more about or even getting involved or exploring, like what could this mean to your community, we definitely welcome your interest. And there are 4 ways that I've listed there that ways for you to get involved. So one is you can become a Grandpal. Or if you know someone in your community or your family who might be a great fit for this program, I definitely encourage you to share more about this program with them. Secondly, we're looking for community champions. Sorry, so that was the one that I just mentioned, community champions to help us recruit Grandpals. The third one is host Grandpals in your community. So if you are an organization or a person who is interested in doing this as a volunteer opportunity to start this up in your community, or know of organizations who may be interested in hosting this in their community, I really encourage you to reach out and express your interest, and I'd be happy to chat through the ins and outs of this program. And then lastly, we're looking for host teachers. So if you are an educator or you know an educator who might want to bring this experiential learning into the classroom, we'd love to hear from you or from them. So I will put a link in the chat here. And that link takes you to a form. It's just a quick form to express your interest, and then what I'll do with that information is I'll follow up with you. I'll get in touch with you and we can chat through and explore whether Grandpals is a fit for you and your community or something that you're interested in promoting within your community. And lastly, if you are sick and tired of surveys or forms, you can always email me. I just put my email in the chat, so you're welcome to send me an email as well. And with that, I will thank you for listening. Really appreciate it, and thank you for being here. And I will turn it back to Alison.
Oh, thank you so much, Jules. It's really fun to hear you talking with such enthusiasm about the program. I just have one question that maybe others have. You have an age range for the Grandpals, but what about the students? Do you have particular age group that you're focusing, or grade group, I guess we should say?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. It's designed right now for grades 5 through 8.
Okay. Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to hear about a different kind of program, and I will invite Charlene to come forward and tell us about cyber seniors.
Thanks, Alison. Our organization really got started. I've been with Cyber Seniors for about 6 years. And so I've kind of seen the evolution of Cyber Seniors from, we started off with the release of a documentary film in 2015. And in that documentary film, two sisters from Toronto they were teaching their grandparents about their flip phone and how to use that, and decided to try to help some more seniors to do that. So they went and talked to the folks at a couple of retirement homes in Toronto and gathered a few friends together, teenagers, and asked to help some of the seniors in those retirement homes with learning some technology. So that was really the impetus for this whole program. And from that documentary, we got approached by a lot of different organizations and people wanting to know how to do that in their own communities. And it started off, it really kind of swept through Canada and the United States. So, and by swept, I just mean that there were organizations in both countries. So it wasn't just a Canadian thing. It wasn't just an American thing. And so we do have, we are running operations in both countries. So that was the impetus for it, and what was happening up to the point of April 2020. So we mostly created materials and facilitated communities doing their own Cyber Seniors programs, which were essentially face-to-face workshops with recruited seniors who wanted to learn more about technology and recruited mentors who had that tech savviness to be able to share with seniors. So it tended to be high school students, but that has certainly changed a bit too. And as of April 2020, when everything shut down, we needed to figure out a different way to connect seniors and youth. So we pivoted and we cobbled together some infrastructure, and we've been recruiting volunteers ever since. And we started off with just trying to get the word out to seniors that we were available to help them with their tech issues. But we also started to get approached by groups. There are a lot of groups in the United States called foster grandparents, which is basically the same as Grandpals in that sense. They had the younger people were of different age ranges. The seniors helped those younger people with different things. But the main obstacle was the seniors knowing how to do anything on an electronic device, whether it be video calling or opening apps or anything like that. So those organizations approached us to train their groups of seniors to be able to do video calling on various platforms. So it's a kind of a mishmash of things that we're doing now. But if on our website, there are two main services that we have. We started off with the one-on-one tech sessions that young people can help a senior with whatever tech issue that they have. And it's a one-on-one, starts off with a phone call. Seniors, we found, tended to be a lot more comfortable on the phone, especially if they didn't yet have that experience with video calling. And so they could get to that point, but starting off with a phone call, and then if the senior was comfortable with it, lots of tech sessions have happened with video calling. So our tech mentor recruiting has really been a lot of word of mouth. So it certainly is active on our website. We have lots of young people sign up with us, but we also have teachers looking for co-op programs. We have groups of students. We've got a lot of students in the Toronto area, but we would love to have more students across Canada, and especially seniors and young tech mentors in rural areas across Canada. Just because that loneliness factor that Alison talked about, and we're certainly very cognizant of, is much more pronounced in those rural areas. So we would love to have some of those people there. Now, without a face-to-face program, it's not quite as applicable, but if a student is in a rural area, they may not have that exposure, whether it's going to school or visiting relatives or whichever, that they might then gain some of that. So we also pivoted our training. And actually, Alison, you can flip to the next slide. I think I'm just sort of going through my material, but we were on the one slide. So as I talked about in the what we do, we have one-on-one tech sessions over the phone or video calls. We also decided to do, and this was back in April 2020, tech webinars every weekday at 4 o'clock. We kind of ended up settling at 4 o'clock due to tech mentors time frames coming back from school, et cetera. And we added some social webinars and events as well. And we also have one webinar every week in French and one in Spanish. We also do the group training of seniors with video calling or whatever other apps that organization might want us to train them in. So we obviously use an intergenerational model. We decided that since young mentors have that tech savviness, that it would be great for them to be able to impart that knowledge to the seniors, while in those relationships, the seniors imparting their knowledge to the youth. So the youth that join us and that volunteer with us tend to be pretty curious. They're tech savvy, and they do really want to know what experience seniors have had, and they really are good listeners. So those are our main services, and those are all available on our senior services page on our website, cyberseniors.org. Next slide, Alison. So for the volunteers, what we do is when they do sign up with us, we have them do our on our system, our online system, that is 6 lessons and quizzes. And the quizzes aren't really meant to really tax them in what they learned in the videos. It was really just to make sure that they've watched them. They're about 12 minutes each, that they've watched them and absorbed some of the learnings, that they're going to understand who they're going to be talking to, what seniors have been through, and realize that the folks that they're going to be talking to have not grown up with electronic devices. They have been through a lot of change in the last 100 years, and change is something that is going to be difficult. So, and continues to be difficult. And now with the pandemic is even worse. So the young people can sort of, they can imagine that if it's difficult for them, it's probably going to be doubly difficult for the seniors. So these are the topics that we cover: introduction to cyber seniors, and then other things that will help the young people work with the older adults. And we've expanded this a bit, not on the portal itself, but we've added to that with weekly workshops for our mentors that they come to and learn things that might come up. Like one of the most recent topics that we had was working with grieving seniors. We realized that seniors are often going through loss. And so it's not just that they're getting older, that their friends, their relatives, sisters, brothers, etc., they're losing people. And so that is something that a volunteer has to be sensitive to. The next slide, please, Alison. So how our volunteering works is that we have the infrastructure that we've set up currently, and we're working on changing it, is that we basically have an electronic cork board. So a senior might book an appointment for tech help with a volunteer. That appointment, that's the date and time that a senior chooses, goes on an electronic cork board, and then the volunteers, going by their schedule and what time that they can commit, go and express interest in a particular appointment, and then the matching is done in our system. So then at the time of the senior's appointment, they will then call the senior on our secure online phoning system. Next slide, Alison. And so for volunteer hours, what we also found was that a lot of students are looking for satisfying their volunteer commitments from school, whether it be college or high school. A lot of them do have those volunteer hour commitments. And so we can satisfy those with it. We designed a report around that. and we track the hours in our online system, and then we transfer them to our portal. Like we still do have to connect those. That's the next project that we have. And then volunteers can get that report pretty easily and submit it to their school. Next slide. So far, we've had, I think, a pretty big impact with the seniors that we serve. Since April 2020, we've had over 3,000 volunteers. They've logged over 15,000 volunteer hours. Each tech session can be anywhere from, it might be that a senior may not answer, and so that's an unsuccessful tech session, but they usually last at least 30 minutes and can last a lot longer than that, whether it's the mentor helping the senior or it's just chatting. We've heard lots of that. And seniors and youth, they sometimes, a senior will book an appointment over many weeks and develop a relationship with that young person, and they really, really rely on them. And we've had lots of good comments about those young people, that they're good listeners and they've helped them immeasurably, and they're really, really pleased with the help that they've gotten and developed those relationships. And we've got lots of videos and news on that on our website at cyberseniors.org/stories. And we did have a recent dump of data for our seniors, and the use of tech devices has increased, and most importantly, loneliness has decreased since their contact with our programming. I think, is that the last slide, Alison? Next one, if there is one. Yeah. So some of our challenges, yeah, if you can go to the challenges slide. Some of our challenges that we've faced here is, first off, the systems that we cobbled together a couple of years ago. We are trying to, the next effort that we have technologically is to connect those so that it's a little bit more seamless. Of course, with young people, they often tend to bypass instructions. And so if we're trying to put together, and we've been trying to hone those instructions for teens to make it really, really easy for them to understand how things work. The integration of those systems is probably going to help. And they're also somewhat transitory due to their other commitments. School comes up, exams, when they go from, the spring term to summer to fall. Sometimes school is overwhelming, so they will, pause volunteering. Hopefully they come back to us, but not always. And seniors aren't very active on easily accessible marketing channels, like the ones that we would think of, like Twitter and TikTok and all that. Seniors don't pay a lot of attention to those, so it's difficult to let them know about the programs other than, say, sending out a flyer, connecting with organizations that if they have a way to connect with their seniors and at least let them know the Cyber Seniors toll-free number, they can certainly connect with us through that. And the people who need us most, like those retirement homes, those people tend to be really busy. So when we need to get those people to pay attention and show them that we're around for their seniors to access their services, that's difficult for us to connect with them. Next slide, please, if there is one. Sorry, just got to plug my computer in.
That's the last slide. But
okay.
If you have more
that's
to
great.
say, there's time.
No, I think I've probably covered it all, but probably going to cover some more in the questions.
I was interested in what you just said about seniors not being very active on social media. I guess it depends on when you define seniors, because we've also heard about how, Facebook is more of a baby boomer, as opposed to TikTok, media, but medium. But, if somebody is on Facebook, and there are a lot of seniors on Facebook, but then
yes,
they probably aren't looking for the kind of help that you're offering. So
yeah, exactly. Well, there is the line there is how much help. Sometimes it's just I have a little problem. I can't connect my printer to my tablet or something. That's fine. Get one of our volunteers to help with that. But then if they can't get to any of those social media channels, or they can't get to that app, or they're confused about, their device keeps asking them to sign in or something, and they're confused about that, that's going to be a big obstacle to them accessing our services.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Jules, and also Charlene, for sharing your experience and your organization's activities with us. On our last slide here, I do have some information about Volunteer Canada, and so if you have any questions about or that you want me to forward on to Jules or Charlene, you can use my email address there. And I want to thank you all for coming. It really was a pleasure to be involved in this webinar with you, even though we couldn't see you all. And thanks to Deb for handling the background, my colleague Deb. Thank you very much. So have a great rest of the afternoon or the day, and